With the first implementation of our server in place, we can now look at the client. And it turns out the client's going to be a little bit longer. We probably won't finish it in quite one video. And the reason for that is mainly because it involves a GUI. So we have this RMI Chat Client. It extends Unicast Remote Object with our remote client. It has to extend those two, but if I want this to be a GUI, I also have to say with JFX app. Now, fortunately, JFX app is a trait. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to extend it because this here is a class. Remember, you only get to extend one class, and then you can say with all the traits that you want. As with our server, we know that we're going to need to implement these methods here. So, that's a non-optional part of our code. To make things happy, we could just put in some default implementations, and now our code compiles. Yay! Yeah, no, this isn't ready yet. So we have our server right now. Actually, this lookup, what I typed here wasn't quite right, and we'll get back to that because in order to do this properly, I actually need some more information. The thing is, this actually has to be a URL, and it's a URL that should start with RMI. So you're used to URLs starting off with http://, not this one. This one is going to start off as RMI://, and then our machine name, which right now is localhost, and then the chat server. You can also put in a port here, but because we brought our RMI client up on 1099, that is the default RMI client, this should work just fine. Okay, but I don't always want to do localhost. It would be nice to pop up a GUI that asks what machine we'd like to connect to, and so I am going to make a dialog that is equal to a new text input dialog, INPUT dialog, and the one from Scala FX. And we're going to give it a default value of localhost because, well, for our examples, that is what we're going to be using. But it would be nice if we had the possibility to not do that. We need to set a title for this. We're asking what machine the server is on. We need to set the content text. And we can put our question here. What server do you want to connect to? And then we also set the header text. And I'll just put the string server name here. That should be a content text to be happy. Okay, so that will set up our dialog. Now we need to show the dialog. And the problem here is that we have some different possibilities on this. And so I'm going to go ahead and I am going to make it so that the server, I also want to get the person's name that they're logging in. I don't want them to be able to change this. So I'm going to get both the name and the server. And what I'm going to put in these is dialog.show and wait. This will sit there and wait for them to type something in. And you notice that gave us back an option. So there are some different cases here. So show and wait once again gives back an option of string. So I have a case of sum, and we could call this machine because it's the name of the machine we want. And so I'm going to actually, let's do this with string interpolation. I'm going to replace localhost with $machine. So that would be our server. Now the thing is, once again, what does this give us back? This gives us back a type remote. It's kind of like how read object gave you back an object and we had to do something to make sure that it was what we wanted. We're going to have to do the same thing here. So this, we need to embed another match inside of our match. And this one's going to match on type. So if we get back a remote server type, now note this is not an RMI server or an RMI chat server. This is not the type we're getting back. We are getting back one of these. Now this is a subtype of that, but this is significant because it's being passed remotely. We don't get a copy of this thing. We do not actually get an instance of this type. We get some other subtype of this that the JVM has created for us. Okay, and we don't have to write it, but it's the thing that's actually handling all of our networking stuff. What if we get back something that is not a remote server? Well, then we'd be in trouble. And then we should pretty much just exit. So we might just print out, there were problems. And then exit. Similarly, down here, what if they don't select something? Well, if they don't select anything, they can't run this program. So I'm also going to exit there. But what if they did select something and we get back a, they selected something and we have a server. So I'm going to wind up giving back here a tuple of name and server. We just don't have our name yet. How are we going to get our name? Well, probably the best way to do that is another text input dialog. This one is not going to default to localhost. I'll have this one default to an empty string because I don't know what their name should be. Their chat name. What name do you want to go by? And I'll just say about username there. Now, of course, this is a different dialog box than we had before. And so we could say val name equals dialog dot show and wait. Now, once again, that gets back an option. So, and in fact, here, instead of dot for each, actually, no, I probably do need to match on this because I need to do something. Once again, if they decide they're not going to give me a name, I'm not going to run. Okay, so one option is a case for name, and then I give back name and server, a case for, and this should be sum of name, a case for none. We're going to do another one of these sys.exits. The program terminates. Okay, is that all? That appears to be happy. So at this point, name will be a string for the name they want to go by, and server will be a remote server. I probably shouldn't call this def. I should call that underscore name for our local variable. And then this can be equal to underscore name. Let's see if that's, yep, there we go. That's happy. We need to set up some other parts of the GUI still, and then we'd have to implement these things. As usual, once you go to a GUI, things take a little bit longer. So I'm going to stop at this point. We have something, it compiles. I can't really do much running with it, and I guess theoretically it would be interesting to Am I running? Apparently I don't think that's okay. So let's do this. I hit a keystroke to run instead of doing. Oh, and indeed, this is not going to work, is it? I can't run the chat server unless I actually make it an app. Okay, now let's try running the chat server. That runs. Run the client, which pops up this. We say localhost. I want to go by Mark, and I get a little window. Okay, and nothing has printed out on either one of these, so it appears that it is. We still had a chat server going here. Yeah, so our RMI chat server is sitting there, and the chat client is sitting there. Yeah. So it doesn't do much right now, but at least it didn't crash on us. So we'll come back and we'll add more functionality. We need to implement both of these, but we also just need to have a GUI that will allow us to interact with this program.